The search and rescue service in Malta has a great reputation for rescuing sailors lost in the Mediterranean.
We are using software here that can calculate drift of any search object. You define what is the search object.
And the Bible says that the sailors were worried about striking this part of Africa, the Sirtis.
For periods of 2 days at a time, we have drifted the object, taking consideration the kind of weather described in the Bible. And surprisingly, even to me, they ended up in Malta, exactly as the Bible says.
And his jaw dropped and he said, look, the ship landed on the coast of Malta on the 14th night about midnight, according to the computer, which is exactly what the Bible said. And it landed right in the southeast quadrant of Malta. That's where the drift would have taken it, which means it could not have gone to the traditional side.
If the ship made landfall somewhere on the southeast coast of Malta, as the computer projected, it would be a major breakthrough.
I've been studying the storms and the weather patterns in the Mediterranean over the past 30 years. This is a storm that can last anything up to 10 days normally, although there are some periods of time when it's been a lot longer than that. Bearing in mind that they were heading in a northwesterly direction, they were coming round the island of Crete and were due to heading up for Rome. And it says that they set off and they had a southerly wind, which would have been absolutely perfect. But it didn't take long before that turned and became a northeasterly, and that was very much against the direction that they wanted to go. Not directly against it, but it meant that they couldn't go with their square sails, which really are best suited for going downwind, and they were really scared of getting dragged down into the Bay of Sirte, down on the Libyan coast, because it's big long sandbanks down there, and the last thing they wanted to do was get down there. So they would have been trying as much as they could to head in a northerly direction, but only actually making northwesterly, which gave them a passage more or less to the...
So you must have 120 feet and 90 feet of water. So the west coast is out of question. It's all over 200 feet, the west coast. So based on the east coast, it's a must. And we have 5 major bays. 5 major. We've got the Melliha Bay, we've got Salina Bay, Baluta Bay, St. George's Bay, and we've got St. Thomas's Bay.
Narrowing down the most likely spot took looking for clues in the book of Acts.
As the dawn broke, they did not recognize the land. Now, that's the most interesting thing.
They didn't know where they were, and they didn't recognize the shore. They would have recognized it up in the north, because that's where many ships went.
Malta was like O'Hare Airport is today for us in the United States. It was well visited by all these sailors, and so they would have been there probably many times. And Luke is commenting, the sailors are saying they don't recognize this island even after they landed there, which means they landed on a part of the island where the sailors had never even seen, which should be consistent with the southeast coast of Malta, where they would not have gone. And as the ship is going towards the coast, it encounters this reef where 2 seas come together. Luke describes it this way. He says, topon de thalason, a Greek word meaning where 2 seas come together.
We read that the seas met, 2 seas met, so we get these contrary currents and big seas rising up.
Now, one says we need a bay with a reef. There must be a reef. But Luke writes more than the reef. He says our ship hit between 2 seas. It's a long, long tongue coming out. The 2 seas are meeting this land coming out. Now, it means 2 seas are meeting each other. That is only 2 places.
So really, the only candidate that makes sense, this is Archaeology 101, that it should be the Munshar Reef on St. Thomas Bay. Clearly, this is the place that it should be according to all the factors that the Bible gives us.
We're here at St. Thomas Bay and the Moonshar Reef is right behind me. And even on a calm day like today, you can see where the two seas come together, the two currents meet above the reef. And that's a telling clue that this is the place where the shipwreck could have happened.
The only place to find 120 feet to 90 feet, a reef, a place with two seas, not a harbor, and no identification, you start eliminating one by one, you finish up with one bay. And that is St. Thomas's Bay.
We're coming up to Malta, which means salvation. They come up to Malta. They would have hit Malta at the southeast coast. They wouldn't have gone up and then turn around back and hit the northern side of the island. It's ridiculous. Now, when it's 14th night had come, about midnight, the sailors sensed that they were drawing near some land. They heard the waves crashing, right? They're hearing these waves. They're going, oh, man, this is a bad sound. And they took soundings and found it to be 20 fathoms, 120 feet. Now, on the map here, this is the 120-foot mark is yellow. We believe that's where they took the marking. And when they had gone a little further, they took soundings again and found it to be 15 fathoms. So if you look at the chart here, the green line is the path of the ship going towards the island. So the red anchor, the red right there is the search area for the anchors. This is the exact place where they found the 4 anchors, where the red dot is, right up to the reef in front of a big cave there. Then fearing lest we should run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors in the stern. So now they're dropping these anchors overboard, and let me tell you, anchors would cost about what you pay for Mercedes-Benz today. They're solid lead, and they're worth a fortune. If we would sell them to medical applications, old stuff like that, with the radiation going down, anchors would be worth a lot of money today. This is the bay with the beach that they saw. The only place you can see the bay with the beach. On the other side of the island, they don't have the reef and everything else. This is it. This is where they're trying to get to. When they're looking at the island, they're seeing on the left side, they're just seeing cliffs. And that's not going to be good if you hit those. The right side of the island, you got these cliffs. The only place you can go is that bay with the beach. But in front of the bay with the beach was a reef. And Paul said, if we can get there. Really, the Greek is, it looks like we're going to try, but we're probably not going to do it, but we're going to try anyway. Okay, so that's the red dot. They're going in that direction. They stop and they drop the anchors there. When the sun comes up, they go to shore, they hit the reef, and the prow's stuck immovable. Where the black dot is, that's about where the prow's stuck. The green arrows show where the wind would go from 2 different angles. The top on the Thalasson is Greek, where 2 seas meet. You can see in the storm here where the reef, where the storm comes, so that you see the waves going from the right to left and from left to right, and they start peeling. Right about here is the exact spot where the ship was being. One day's catch.
It was around 1975, Bob, when we went down. We used to dive this area very, very often. In those days, we used to be spear fishermen. There wasn't many divers around. And came across this big Roman anchor, which we learned afterwards it was a Roman anchor made out of lead. And then we came across another 3.
I remember I met Tony at one of these athletic meetings. I was a teacher, he was a teacher.
Joe Navarro was the fun-loving one of the group, and they went down spearfishing, and Joe was right there when they found one of the anchors and brought it up.
First we started snorkeling together, but he said, we'll start fishing together so you don't get into problems. I was a feeble-looking guy compared with him, he's a big man. They called us the underwater cowboys.
Later on, the two men started a diving club called Cresta Key, where they would spend their summers training divers in the nascent art of scuba. Charlie Vella was a teenager at the time who got a summer job at Cresta Key.
I was about 15, 16 at the time, still at school. Tony was my physical training teacher, and that's how I got going. They were both located by Tony himself. You need to have a very good keen eye for this kind of thing, because of the marine growth and what have you, they seem to blend in with the rest of the stuff.
As fishermen, these divers spent lots of time underwater, scouring reefs for fish they could sell to local restaurants. And that's how Tony McAuliffe Borg made what may have been his most valuable find ever.
Tony told me, Joe, I need your help because I found an anchor and we want to bring it up. I said, fair enough, Tony. So off we went. It wasn't a very nice day because I have dived so many times with Tony, but I must say that the time we brought up that anchor, it gave us so many problems. I always said to myself, there is something tied up with this thing. You say to yourself, but what am I doing? But this could be, you know, something, a treasure. You know it's not something that you normally find on the bottom. There must be some value here. But this time, it was tough, even to bring it out. We had lifting bags, we had these drums, oil drums, then you just take your DV out, put air into it. First you start seeing a rumble. Then it tears itself from the bottom and it starts floating slowly up. I tell you, when this thing came up, and I looked up at it going, my goodness, thank you. Here, it's like fireworks in the festa, you know.
Shown me is, to be precise, a part of an anchor. It's called an anchor stock, which is in lead and which is an essential part of a typical Roman anchor, which had its floor width, that is the flourishing period, around the 1st century.